The bridge shuddered as another volley tore through the starboard hull. Commander Thexolar gripped the edge of his station, his three-fingered hands trembling, as red emergency lights bathed the command deck in crimson. The tactical display flickered, showing their attackers circling like predators, sensing wounded prey. "Core breach in engineering," the navigator announced, her voice steady despite the fear scent rolling off her scales. "Primary AI matrix is critical. We're losing her." Thexolar's throat sac contracted. The ship's intelligence, Meridian, had served for 70 cycles. She guided them through the void, calculated their jumps, managed every system from life support to weapons. Without her, they were adrift. "Redirect power to shields," he ordered. "Buy us time." The engineer's voice crackled through the comm, rougher than the others, with that distinctive human accent that always sounded too sharp, too forceful. "Commander, the servers are cooking themselves. Coolant system is gone. Meridian's data cores are overheating. She's fragmenting. Can you stabilize her, Thompson?" A pause. Then, "Maybe. But not from here." Thexolar understood what that meant. Engineering was 3 decks below, in the section where the hull breach had opened them to vacuum, where radiation was bleeding through compromised shielding, where the temperature readings showed numbers incompatible with much-known life. Another impact sent sparks cascading from the overhead panels. The ship groaned, a sound no vessel should make. On his display, Meridian's status indicators turned from amber to red, one by one. Her processes were dying. The ship was dying. "All hands," Thexolar broadcast, his voice carrying the weight of command and resignation both. "Prepare to abandon ship. Evacuation protocols in effect. Make for the escape pods. We have perhaps 10 minutes before cascade failure." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, born of drills and discipline. They gathered emergency kits, sealed their environment suits, began the orderly retreat that would save their lives, if not their home. "Thompson," Thexolar said into his comm, "you heard the order. Get to the pods." Silence. "Thompson, acknowledge." The human's voice came back, but it sounded distant, distracted. "Commander, Meridian is still in there. Her consciousness core. It's intact. Just overheating. If someone can keep the servers cool for maybe 30, 40 minutes, rescue could get here. She wouldn't have to die. The hull is breached. Engineering is irradiated. There's no coolant, no environmental controls. Thompson, there's no one who can survive down there long enough to matter. I can." Thexolar felt his blood chill. He had served with humans before, knew their reputation, knew the stories whispered in port stations and fleet academies. Humans didn't think like other species. They formed attachments to things that shouldn't matter. They took risks that defied all logic. They survived what killed everyone else, and then they came back for more. "Thompson, that's an order. Report to evacuation immediately." "Respectfully, Commander, no." The navigator looked up sharply. Across the bridge, the weapons officer's mandibles clicked in disbelief. No one refused a direct evacuation order, not when the ship was dying, not when survival hung by a thread. "Thompson, she's asking for help, Commander." The human's voice was quiet now, almost gentle. "Meridian, I can hear her through the local network. She's scared. She knows she's dying. I'm not leaving her alone." Thexolar closed his eyes. In his species' culture, intelligence, artificial or organic, was sacred. But so was survival. So was the logic that said one didn't throw away life for a machine, no matter how sophisticated. But humans were different. Humans didn't calculate acceptable losses the same way. "What are you planning?" Thexolar asked, though part of him didn't want to know. "The cooling system is shot. but the servers just need temperature regulation. I've got emergency coolant in my suit. I can vent it directly onto the cores, keep them from melting. My suit's got enough oxygen to last maybe 90 minutes if I'm careful. Rescue should be here in 40. The math works. The math. Thexolar wanted to laugh, but the sound would have been bitter. The human was discussing walking into a radioactive hell with the casual tone of someone solving a maintenance request. Radiation exposure, Thexolar said. Hull breach, structural instability. Yeah, that's all bad, Thompson admitted, but my suit has rad shielding. Won't be pleasant, but I've had worse. And if the structure fails, well, Meridian and I go together. She won't be alone. On the tactical display, enemy ships were regrouping for another pass. The distress beacon was broadcasting, but the nearest Allied vessel was 38 minutes out, according to their last update. 38 minutes. Thompson would have to keep the servers alive. 38 minutes, in conditions that would kill most species in under 5. The rest of you need to go, Thompson continued. I'm sealing the engineering deck. Get to the pods. I'll keep the lights on down here. Thexolar looked at his crew. They were ready, waiting at the bridge exit. He could order Thompson to evacuate, could threaten discipline, could invoke regulation, but he had served with humans long enough to know it wouldn't matter. Once they decided to save something, they became immovable as neutron stars. 38 minutes, Thexolar said. The rescue frigate Daleth is en route. They will extract you and recover what's left of Meridian's core. I'll keep her running till they get here, Commander. You have my word. Thexolar gestured to his crew. They filed out, their footsteps echoing in the dying ship. He was last to leave, pausing at the door, to look back at the bridge where Meridian had lived for so long, where her voice had guided them through the dark. Good luck, Engineer Thompson, he said softly. Thank you, sir. Take care of yourself. The bridge door sealed behind them. Thexolar joined the evacuation queue, moving through corridors that flickered with failing power. Around him, his crew maintained their discipline, but he could taste their fear, thick and acrid in the recycled air. They reached the pod bays. One by one, the crew climbed aboard, strapping into acceleration couches. Thexolar did a final count, confirming all personnel accounted for, all except one. Commander, his second officer said quietly, we're ready for launch. Thexolar nodded. The pods detached with mechanical precision, small thrusters firing to push them clear of the wounded vessel. Through the viewport, he watched his ship growing smaller. The Meridian's song, named for the AI who had been her soul. Fire leaked from her wounds. Her lights flickered like a dying heartbeat. And somewhere deep inside, in a hell of heat and radiation, a human was fighting to save her. In engineering, Thompson worked with methodical precision, despite the tremor in his hands. The temperature readout on his helmet display showed 63 degrees Celsius and climbing. His suit's cooling system labored to keep his core temperature stable, fighting a losing battle against the inferno. The server cores lined the wall, massive crystalline matrices that housed Meridian's consciousness. They glowed with internal heat, pulsing like fevered organs. Thompson had already vented half his suit's emergency coolant supply directly onto them, creating clouds of vapor that frosted instantly in the temperature differential before boiling away. How are you feeling, Meridian? He asked aloud. The AI's voice came through his helmet speakers, fragmented and weak. Pain is not the correct term, but I am experiencing degradation, processes terminating, memory sectors corrupting. I've got you, Thompson said, checking another core temperature. Still too high, but stable for now. You're going to make it. Probability. This does not favor survival. Thompson laughed, though it came out more like a cough. The air in his suit tasted metallic. Yeah, well, I've never been good with probability. Engineer, remember? I fix things. He moved to the next server bank, his movements slower than they should be. The radiation counter on his wrist was reading numbers he tried not to look at. The suit's shielding was good, but not perfect. Nothing was perfect. Every minute down here meant cellular damage, meant his body absorbing energy it was never meant to handle. But Meridian was still alive, still conscious, still asking him questions in her fractured voice, still processing what data she could still access. She was in there, fighting to hold herself together, and he'd be damned if he let her die alone. Tell me about your homeworld, Meridian said. Distraction protocols? Suggest conversation. Reduces stress. Thompson smiled as he rerouted the remaining coolant lines. Earth? It's beautiful. Blue and green. Lots of water. We evolved near the ocean, you know. Maybe that's why we're stubborn. Tides come in, tides go out. But the rocks stay put. Poetic. I have my moments. He checked his oxygen levels. 71 minutes remaining. The rescue frigate was still 23 minutes out, according to his suit's link to their beacon. The math was getting tighter. The ship shuddered. Something exploded several decks above, sending a vibration through the floor plates. Thompson braced himself against a server housing, feeling the heat even through his gloves. Through the breach in the hull, he could see stars wheeling past. They had no stabilization, no navigation. They were drifting, helpless. Core temperature spiking, Meridian warned. Server Bank 3. Critical. Thompson was already moving, dragging his emergency coolant pack. His power reserves were dropping. Life support was taxing the system. He had to make a choice soon. Climate control or communications. Oxygen or the ability to call for help. He chose oxygen. Always oxygen. What good was calling for help if he suffocated before they arrived? The coolant sprayed across the overheating cores, and Meridian's voice steadied, became clearer. Thank you. Don't mention it. Thompson's own voice sounded strained, even to himself. The temperature inside his suit was rising. 29 degrees. His cooling system was losing the fight. Sweat ran down his face, stinging his eyes. You should abandon me, Meridian said. Your survival probability decreases with each minute. Not happening. Thompson wiped his face with the back of his glove. We're partners, remember? You calculate the jumps. I keep the engines running. I don't leave my partners behind. I am not alive. Not as you define life. You think, you feel. You're scared right now. That's alive enough for me. He moved to the next server, his legs heavy. The radiation exposure was adding up. He could feel it now, a deep exhaustion settling into his bones. Besides, your crew. I don't abandon crew. Meridian was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried something that sounded almost like wonder. This is the human pack bonding behavior. I have read about it. You form attachments to anything. Guilty as charged. Thompson laughed, then coughed. His throat was raw. Humans adopted wolves, then cats, then basically every other animal. We have people who bond with robots, with ships, with stuffed toys. It's kind of our thing. Illogical? Completely. But it keeps us going. He checked the temperature readings. Stable. All of them stable. His coolant was nearly exhausted. But if he rationed it, if he applied it only when cores spiked, he might make it to rescue. How are your processes? Degraded but functional. I am preserving core memories. Jettisoning non-essential data. I will lose much, but The essential self remains. That's my girl. Thompson sat down heavily against a bulkhead. The deck plating was hot, even through his suit. 41 degrees inside now. His vision swam. Rescue is 16 minutes out. We can do 16 minutes. Your vital signs are concerning. Yeah, I'm not feeling great, Thompson admitted, but I've got enough left in me. Trust me. The ship lurched. Another hit. Or maybe structural failure. It was getting hard to think clearly. The heat, the radiation, the oxygen deprivation, as his suit struggled to scrub the CO2 from increasingly stale air. Thompson's hands shook as he prepared another coolant spray. Tell me more. About Earth, Meridian said. The oceans? Thompson closed his eyes, picturing it. Atlantic Ocean? I grew up near there. You could stand on the beach and watch the waves come in over and over, never stopping. Sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, but always there, persistent. That's the ocean. That's humanity, I guess. We just keep coming back. Like waves, like waves. A server alarm shrieked. Thompson's eyes snapped open. Bank 7 was critical. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. Everything felt distant, wrapped in cotton. He crawled instead, dragging the coolant pack, leaving a trail of sweat on the deck plates. Stay with me, Meridian, he gasped, spraying coolant across the glowing cores. Almost there. Rescue frigate. Entering weapons range, Meridian reported, her voice stronger now that the servers cooled. They are engaging remaining hostiles. Good. That's good. Thompson slumped against the server housing. His suit's internal temperature alarm was screaming. 46 degrees. His core temperature was dangerously high. But Meridian's servers were stable. Green lights across the board. He'd done it. 9 minutes, Meridian said softly. Thompson, your vital signs. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. But you're okay. That's what matters. Why? The AI's question was simple but vast. Why would you die for me? Thompson thought about it, his mind sluggish, but his answer clear. Because you asked for help. Because you were scared. Because I could. He smiled, though no one could see it. That's enough, isn't it? For humans? Perhaps it is. The minutes crawled past. Thompson's consciousness flickered like Meridian's had, in and out. He heard the AI talking to him, reciting poetry, telling him stories, anything to keep him aware. He felt the ship shudder as the rescue frigate docked, heard the clang of airlocks mating. Medical team, boarding, Meridian said. Thompson, stay awake, please. Trying, he mumbled. The engineering door exploded inward. Thompson saw figures in heavy radiation suits, saw them running toward him. Alien faces behind visors, wide with shock. They were saying something, but the words didn't make sense anymore. Strong hands lifted him, carried him. The temperature began to drop as they moved him away from the heat. Someone was working on his suit, opening it, and he wanted to protest because his air would run out. But then he realized he could breathe, could actually breathe, and it was cool and clean. Meridian, he managed to say. One of the rescuers, a Thexian like the commander, leaned close. The AI is stable. You saved her. You saved Meridian. Thompson smiled. Good. That's good. Then the darkness took him, gentle as ocean waves. Commander Thexolar stood in the medical bay of the rescue frigate, watching through the quarantine glass as the human lay unconscious in the treatment pod. The doctors had worked for hours, flushing radiation from Thompson's system, repairing cellular damage, bringing his temperature down from levels that should have killed him. He'll survive, the chief medical officer said, her scales a muted brown indicating relief. Barely. Another 5 minutes in that heat, and his organs would have failed. The radiation exposure will take time to heal, but humans are resilient. That's one word for it, Thexolar murmured. Behind them, technicians were installing Meridian's salvaged core into the frigate's auxiliary systems. The AI had lost nearly 40% of her non-essential data, but her personality matrix was intact. Her consciousness survived, because a human had refused to let her die alone. "Commander," Meridian's voice came through the bay's speakers, still weak, but unmistakably her. "Is Thompson?" "He lives," Thexolar assured her. "Thanks to you keeping him conscious, you saved each other." "He saved me. I merely talked. You gave him a reason to stay awake. That matters." Thexolar pressed one hand against the glass. Inside, Thompson's chest rose and fell with steady breaths. What he did was insane by any rational measure, staying in radiation and heat that should have killed him, using his own life support to keep your servers cool, refusing evacuation. "It was the human pack bonding," Meridian said. "The literature documents this behavior. They form attachments that transcend logic." "Yes," Thexolar agreed. "They do." He thought about the stories, the ones whispered across the fleet. Humans who ran into burning ships to save trapped crew members of species they'd just met. Humans who gave their own oxygen to wounded aliens. Humans who defended positions long after any sane being would have retreated, simply because someone was counting on them. Humans who looked at a dying AI and saw not a machine, but a person worth saving. It was irrational. It was inefficient. It violated every principle of self-preservation. It was also why every ship in the fleet wanted at least one human in their crew. "When he wakes," Thexolar said quietly, "tell him thank you. From all of us." "I will," Meridian promised, "though I suspect he will say it was nothing, that it was simply what needed to be done." "Probably." Thexolar watched the steady rise and fall of Thompson's breathing. "That's what makes it remarkable. They don't see themselves as heroes. They just see someone who needs help, and they refuse to walk away." The medical bay fell silent, save for the soft beep of monitors and the hum of life support. Outside the viewport, stars drifted past, infinite and cold. But inside, in the warmth of the ship, a human slept and dreamed of oceans. And an I kept watch over him, grateful to be alive, grateful for the stubborn creature who had seen her as worth saving. The tide had come in, the tide had gone out, and the rock had stayed put, just as it always did. Thompson woke 3 days later to find Meridian's voice waiting for him, warm and whole, telling him about the new ship they'd been assigned to. Telling him she'd requested him specifically for her engineering crew. Telling him, in her careful way, that she understood now what humans meant by friendship. He smiled, squeezed the hand of the Thexian nurse, checking his vitals, and asked when he could get back to work. Because that was what humans did. They survived the unsurvivable. They saved the unsavable. And then they got back to work. Not because they were trying to be heroes, but because someone, somewhere, might need them. And they refused to let anyone die alone.
Claim your seat at the apex.